The fluorescent lights above my hospital bed hummed with that persistent, sterile buzz that makes you feel like you're trapped in a nightmare you can't wake up from. I could smell the antiseptic mixed with something else. Fear, maybe. My fear. The kind that sits in your chest like a stone. I'd been here for 3 days. 3 days since the accident. 3 days since the SUV ran the red light and T-boned my Honda Civic on the intersection of Madison and 5th. 3 days of pain medication that barely touched the agony radiating from my shattered pelvis and fractured ribs. But none of that pain compared to what I was about to hear. My husband, Brandon, stood at the foot of my bed, 34 years old, wearing that gray Armani suit I'd bought him for his birthday last year, the one he said made him feel invincible. His dark hair was perfectly styled, not a strand out of place. He looked like he'd just come from the office, which he had, because even though his wife was lying broken in a hospital bed, the merger couldn't wait. I should have seen it then. The coldness in his green eyes. The way he kept checking his phone. The distance. "Brandon," I whispered, my voice hoarse from the breathing tube they'd only removed yesterday. "Can you come closer? I can barely see you." He didn't move. Dr. Patterson stood beside him, my orthopedic surgeon, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a practical bun. She'd been the one to explain my injuries, to tell me about the surgeries I'd need, the months of physical therapy ahead. "Mrs. Whitmore," she began, her voice gentle but professional, "we need to discuss your treatment plan. The damage to your pelvis is extensive. You'll need at least 2 more surgeries, possibly 3. The recovery will be long. We're looking at 6 to 8 months before you can walk without assistance, and even then, you'll likely need ongoing physical therapy for at least a year." I tried to process her words, but they felt distant, muffled. I looked at Brandon, searching his face for something. Comfort, love, fear for me. Anything. He was texting. "The good news," Dr. Patterson continued, "is that with proper treatment and dedication to physical therapy, you should make a near-complete recovery. You're young, you're healthy otherwise. But I won't lie to you, it's going to be difficult. You'll need support, someone to help you with daily activities for several months." I reached out my hand toward Brandon. "Honey, did you hear that? I'm going to be okay. It'll be hard, but—" He looked up from his phone, and something in his expression made my stomach drop. "How much?" he asked Dr. Patterson, cutting me off. She blinked. "I'm sorry. How much is all of this going to cost? The surgeries, the physical therapy, all of it." Dr. Patterson glanced at me, then back at Brandon. "Well, with insurance, the out-of-pocket expenses will likely be somewhere between $40,000 and $60,000. Possibly more if complications arise, or if—" "Jesus Christ," Brandon muttered, running his hand through his hair. "$60,000. Brandon," I started, "do you have any idea what kind of position this puts me in?" He wasn't even looking at me now. He was looking at Dr. Patterson like she just told him his car needed new tires. Annoyed. Inconvenienced. My heart started pounding, and the monitor beside my bed beeped faster. A nurse glanced in through the window but didn't enter. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Brandon, what do you mean?" He finally looked at me. Really looked at me. And what I saw in his eyes made me wish I'd died in that intersection. "Olivia," he said, my name sounding foreign in his mouth, like he was addressing a stranger. "We need to be realistic here." "Realistic?" I echoed, my chest tightening. "About what?" Dr. Patterson shifted uncomfortably. "Perhaps I should give you two some privacy." "No," Brandon said sharply. "You should hear this too. You need to understand the full picture." The full picture? What the hell was he talking about? He moved closer to the bed, but not to comfort me. He stood there like a lawyer presenting a case, his posture rigid, his voice measured. "I've been doing a lot of thinking over the past 3 days," he began. "About us. About our marriage. About where we're headed." The words hit me like another car crash. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I don't think I can do this, Olivia. I don't think I can handle 8 months of you being helpless, of having to take care of you, of watching you struggle. And honestly," he paused, his jaw clenching, "I don't want to." The room spun. The machines around me seemed to get louder, their beeping and humming filling my ears until it was all I could hear. "You don't want to," I repeated numbly. "Look at you," he said, and there was something cruel in his voice now, something I'd never heard before. You can't even sit up on your own. You can't shower, you can't walk, you can't do anything. What kind of life is that? What kind of marriage is that? Tears burned my eyes. Brandon, I was hit by a car. This isn't my fault. I'm going to recover, the doctor just said. In 8 months, he snapped. Maybe, if everything goes perfectly. And what am I supposed to do in the meantime? Put my life on hold? Become your nursemaid? Dr. Patterson cleared her throat. Mr. Whitmore, I think you need to step outside and cool down. This is completely inappropriate. Inappropriate? He laughed, but it was hollow, bitter. What's inappropriate is expecting me to throw away a year of my life because my wife wasn't paying attention at a red light. I had a green light. I screamed, and the effort sent spikes of pain through my ribs. I gasped, tears streaming down my face. The other driver ran the red light. The police report. I don't care about the police report, he said coldly. All I care about is that my wife is a broken mess, and fixing her is going to cost me $60,000 and a year of my life. The words hung in the air like poison. Dr. Patterson moved between us, her face flushed with anger. Mr. Whitmore, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I'm not done, he said, his voice dropping lower. He looked past the doctor, straight at me. I want a divorce, Olivia. The world stopped. You what? A divorce. I've already spoken to a lawyer. I'm filing next week. I couldn't breathe. The pain in my chest had nothing to do with broken ribs anymore. You can't, I whispered. Brandon, we've been together for 7 years. Married for 4. We bought a house together. We were trying for a baby. You can't just. I can, he said simply. And I am. Dr. Patterson was on her phone now, calling security probably, but I barely registered it. All I could see was my husband, the man I'd loved since I was 24, the man I'd built a life with, staring at me like I was garbage he needed to dispose of. Why? I asked, my voice breaking. Why now? Why like this? He was quiet for a moment, and I thought maybe I'd reached something in him. Some remnant of the man I'd married. Then he said it. The words that would destroy everything. Because you're not worth saving. The silence that followed was deafening. What did you just say? Dr. Patterson's voice was barely above a whisper, but it shook with rage. Brandon didn't look away from me. You heard me. She's not worth saving. Not the money, not the time, not the effort. I'm 34 years old. I have a career that's finally taking off. The last thing I need is a wife who's going to be a burden for the next year, or possibly longer if something goes wrong. He checked his watch, actually checked his watch, like this was just another meeting running long. I'm not paying for any of this, he continued, his voice businesslike now. Your insurance will cover some of it, but the rest? That's on you. I've already moved my finances into a separate account. My lawyer says that since the accident happened after we were already having marital problems. We weren't having marital problems. I screamed. We were fine. We were happy. He raised an eyebrow. Were we? Because I can think of at least a dozen problems. Your boring job at the nonprofit that pays nothing. Your obsession with saving every stray animal in Portland. The way you never wanted to go to work functions with me because you said my colleagues were pretentious. Each word was a knife. Each example was another piece of our life together being twisted into something ugly. Those aren't problems, I said, my voice barely audible. Those are just life. Marriage. Compromise. Well, I'm done compromising, he said. I'm done with this marriage, and I'm especially done with you. Security arrived then. 2 large men in uniforms who looked uncertain about what they were walking into. Dr. Patterson pointed at Brandon. Get him out of here. Now. Brandon straightened his tie, completely unbothered. I'm leaving. Olivia, you'll be hearing from my lawyer. Don't try to contact me. Don't call. Don't text. Don't show up at the house. It's my house, too. I sobbed. Not for long, he said. Then he looked at Dr. Patterson. Oh, and doctor? When you're discussing treatment options with my wife, make sure she understands that she's on her own financially. I won't be covering any of her medical expenses beyond what's legally required, which according to my attorney, is nothing since we're filing for divorce. He walked out, just like that, 7 years together, and he walked out of my hospital room without looking back. I couldn't stop crying. The sobs tore through me, each one sending fresh waves of agony through my broken body. Dr. Patterson held my hand, murmuring something about pain medication and counselors and legal advocates, but I couldn't hear her over the roaring in my ears. My husband had just abandoned me in a hospital bed because I wasn't worth the inconvenience of loving. The nurse came in and adjusted my four, probably adding something to calm me down. The world started to blur at the edges, but before the medication pulled me under, one thought crystallized in my mind with perfect, terrible clarity. He was going to regret this. I didn't know how yet. I didn't know when. But somewhere beneath the pain and the grief and the betrayal, something hard and cold was forming in my chest. Brandon Whitmore thought I wasn't worth saving. He had no idea what he'd just done. He had no idea who he just created. I woke up to gray morning light filtering through the hospital blinds. For exactly 3 seconds, I forgot. For 3 blissful seconds, I was just a woman waking up in a hospital bed, uncomfortable and in pain, but still whole somehow. Then I remembered. She's not worth saving. The words crashed over me like ice water, and I curled into myself as much as my broken body would allow. The movement sent lightning bolts of pain through my pelvis, and I gasped, gripping the bed rails. "Easy, easy," a voice said from the corner of the room. I turned my head, even that hurt, and saw a woman I didn't recognize sitting in the visitor's chair. She was in her early 40s, black, with natural hair pulled back in a patterned headscarf, wearing jeans and a cardigan despite the early October chill that must have been seeping through Portland streets. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice raspy. My throat felt raw from yesterday's crying. She stood and moved closer, but not too close, respectful of my space. "My name is Naomi Foster. I'm a patient advocate with the hospital's social services department. Dr. Patterson called me yesterday after your husband left." "Husband?" The word felt like a punch. "He's not my husband anymore," I said flatly. "Apparently." Naomi nodded slowly. "I read the notes from yesterday's incident. I'm so sorry, Olivia. What he said to you was cruel and completely unacceptable." Something about her directness broke through the fog. She wasn't sugarcoating it or trying to make excuses. She was just stating a fact. What Brandon did was cruel. "He meant it," I whispered. "Every word." "I believe you," Naomi said simply. She pulled the chair closer to my bed and sat down. "And I also believe you're going to get through this." I laughed, but it came out as a sob. "How?" "I can't walk. I can't work. I can't pay for my own medical care. My husband, ex-husband, just told me I'm worthless and he's draining our accounts. How am I supposed to get through this?" Naomi leaned forward, her dark eyes intense. "One step at a time. And I mean that literally. You're going to learn to walk again, Olivia. You're going to learn to take care of yourself again. And you're going to learn to build a new life. But first, we need to deal with the immediate problems." She pulled out a tablet and stylus. "Let's start with the practical stuff. Do you have family nearby? Parents, siblings, close friends who can help during your recovery?" I shook my head. My parents retired to Arizona 3 years ago. My dad has early-stage Alzheimer's. They can't help. My brother lives in Boston with his family. We talk maybe twice a year. The isolation of my situation hit me like a truck. I have friends, but, God, how do I even tell them? "Hey, my husband abandoned me in the hospital because I'm too much trouble?" "You tell them the truth," Naomi said firmly. "People who love you will show up. The ones who don't, you didn't need them anyway." "What about money?" I asked, panic rising in my chest. Brandon said he moved everything. I don't even know what's in our accounts anymore. How do I pay for this? I gestured weakly at the hospital room around us. Naomi made notes on her tablet. "Okay, here's what we're going to do. First, I'm going to connect you with our financial counselor. They'll help you understand your insurance coverage and set up a payment plan for anything not covered. The hospital isn't going to throw you out on the street, Olivia. We'll figure this out. But $60,000 is a number we can work with," she interrupted. "Payment plans, sliding scale fees, sometimes even debt forgiveness depending on your situation. You're going to be out of work for months. That qualifies you for assistance programs." She tapped something on her tablet. "Second, I'm connecting you with a lawyer. Pro bono. She specializes in family law and has helped other patients in situations like yours. If your husband is trying to separate finances before filing for divorce, there are legal remedies. He doesn't get to just take everything and leave you with nothing. A tiny spark of something, hope, anger, flickered in my chest. He's already talked to a lawyer. He said he's filing next week. Then you need to file first, Naomi said bluntly. And you need to freeze any joint accounts immediately. We're getting you a laptop today so you can access your bank accounts. Can you remember your login information? I nodded slowly. Brandon had always handled our finances. He said he was better with money, that I should focus on my nonprofit work and not worry about bills. I thought it was sweet, him taking care of those details. Now I realized it was control. Good, Naomi continued. Third, we're going to work on your physical recovery. Dr. Patterson says your first surgery is scheduled for tomorrow morning. They're going to put pins in your pelvis and repair some of the internal damage. It's going to be rough, Olivia. I won't lie to you. But you're tough. You're going to get through it. How do you know I'm tough? I asked, tears slipping down my cheeks. I don't feel tough. I feel broken. Naomi reached out and gently touched my hand, the one without the 4. You're still here, aren't you? After what your husband said, after everything that happened yesterday, you're still here. You didn't give up. That's tough. We sat in silence for a moment, and I let her words sink in. She was right. I was still here. Broken, terrified, abandoned, but still here. I want to destroy him, I said quietly. The words surprised me, coming from somewhere deep and dark inside. For what he said, for leaving me like this. I want him to feel every bit of pain he caused me. Naomi didn't look shocked. She just nodded. That's a normal feeling. Rage is part of grief. But right now, we need to focus that energy on survival. Getting angry at Brandon can come later. Right now, we get you strong. We get you walking. We get you out of this hospital and into your own life again. And then, she paused, a small smile playing at her lips. Then you can figure out how to make him regret every word he said. A knock at the door interrupted us. A young woman in scrubs peeked in, one of the nurses from yesterday. Ms. Whitmore, you have visitors. Should I send them away? My stomach clenched. Who is it? A Jennifer Young and a Michael Torres? They said they're your friends from work. Jenny and Michael. Relief flooded through me. They worked at the nonprofit with me, Portland Youth Arts Alliance. Jenny was the grant coordinator. Michael ran the after-school programs. We got in drinks after work just a week ago, talking about the fall fundraiser. That felt like a lifetime ago. Send them in, I said. Naomi stood. I'll give you some time with your friends. But I'll be back this afternoon with that lawyer and the financial counselor. In the meantime, think about what you want to fight for, Olivia. Because you're going to have to fight. She left just as Jenny and Michael came in, both of them carrying coffee cups and looking terrified. Jenny saw me and burst into tears. Oh my God, Olivia. She rushed to my bedside, setting down her coffee and reaching for my hand. Jenny was 28, Chinese American, with long black hair usually in a sleek ponytail but today falling loose around her shoulders. Her eyes were red behind her glasses. Michael hung back, his usual easy smile replaced with concern. He was 32, Mexican-American, tall and broad-shouldered with a beard he was always threatening to shave. He held his coffee cup like a shield. We came as soon as we heard, Jenny said, squeezing my hand carefully. The whole office is freaking out. We didn't know about the accident until yesterday afternoon. Why didn't you call us? I was unconscious for the first day, I said weakly. And yesterday was... I trailed off. How did I even begin to explain? Yesterday was what? Michael asked, moving closer. He set his coffee down on the rolling tray table. Liv, what's going on? You look... destroyed, I offered with a bitter laugh. Yeah, that's because my husband came to visit yesterday and told me he wants a divorce because I'm not worth the trouble of helping me recover. The silence was deafening. Jenny's mouth literally fell open. He said what? Actually, his exact words were, she's not worth saving, I said, and saying it out loud made it real again. Fresh tears burned my eyes. He said I'm going to be a burden, that he's not paying for my medical care, that he's filing for divorce next week. That motherfucker, Michael breathed. That absolute piece of shit. Jenny was shaking her head, tears streaming down her face. No, he didn't. Brandon wouldn't, he can't. He did, I said firmly. And he meant every word. He's already moved his money out of our joint accounts. He's already talked to a lawyer. He walked out of here yesterday like I was garbage he was tired of dealing with. Michael dragged his hand down his face, looking like he wanted to punch something. I never liked that guy. Never. He always treated you like you were less than him because you worked at a non-profit instead of some corporate bullshit. Michael, Jenny warned, but she didn't argue with him. It's true, Michael continued. Every office party we invited you guys to, he'd show up for 20 minutes and spend the whole time on his phone or making comments about how quaint our work was. Like helping kids learn art was somehow beneath him. I thought about all the times I'd made excuses for Brandon's behavior. He's stressed from work. He's not good in social situations. He doesn't mean it like that. Maybe he did mean it exactly like that. I can't believe this is happening, I whispered. 3 days ago, we were eating dinner together talking about maybe starting to try for a baby next year. And now he's gone. Just gone. Jenny pulled the visitor's chair closer and sat down, still holding my hand. You're not alone, Liv. You know that, right? You have us. You have the whole office. Hell, Marie already started a meal train for when you get out of the hospital. Marie was our executive director, a force of nature in her 60s who ran the nonprofit with an iron fist and a huge heart. I don't even know when I'm getting out, I said. I have surgery tomorrow, then more surgeries after that, then months of physical therapy. I can't work. I can't pay my bills. I don't know how I'm going to survive this. One day at a time, Michael said, echoing Naomi's words. And we're going to help you. Whatever you need, rides to physical therapy, help around your house, someone to yell at your insurance company, we're here. I might not have a house, I said quietly. It's in both our names. Brandon will probably try to keep it in the divorce. Jenny's eyes flashed with anger. Like hell he will. You need to get a lawyer, Liv. Today. Right now. The patient advocate is bringing one this afternoon, I said. Pro bono. Good, Jenny said fiercely. Because we're going to fight this. All of it. Brandon doesn't get to just throw you away and keep everything. They stayed for 2 hours until the nurses kicked them out, so I could rest before my pre-op appointments. Before they left, Jenny leaned down and hugged me as carefully as she could. You're going to get through this, she whispered in my ear. And when you do, we're going to make him wish he'd never been born. After they left, I lay in the quiet hospital room and stared at the ceiling. The pain medication was making me drowsy, but my mind was racing. Brandon thought I was weak. He thought I was worthless, not worth the effort of saving. He was about to find out how wrong he was. But first, I had to survive. I had to get strong. I had to learn to walk again, to take care of myself again, to build a life without him. The rage was still there, simmering under the grief. But Naomi was right. I needed to focus that rage on survival first. Revenge could wait. The surgery went well, or so Dr. Patterson told me when I woke up in recovery, groggy and nauseous from the anesthesia. They'd inserted 3 pins in my pelvis and repaired the internal damage. I'd have 2 more surgeries over the next 6 weeks. 6 weeks. 6 more weeks of being trapped in a hospital bed before I could even begin physical therapy. But things were moving on other fronts. Naomi had been true to her word. That afternoon, despite my post-surgery haze, she brought in a lawyer, a woman named Lucia Moreno, sharp-eyed and in her 50s, who took one look at my situation and immediately got to work. First things first, Lucia had said, sitting beside my hospital bed with a legal pad. We're filing for divorce today. Not next week, when Brandon planned to. Today. That gives us the advantage position. But I'm in a hospital bed. I'd protested weakly. Doesn't matter. We can do everything electronically. You just need to sign. She'd pulled out her tablet. Second, we're freezing all joint accounts immediately and filing an emergency motion for spousal support. Oregon is an equitable distribution state, which means marital assets get divided fairly, not necessarily equally, but fairly. Given that you're disabled and unable to work due to an accident that happened during the marriage, you have a strong case. He's going to fight me on everything, I'd said. Let him fight, Lucia had replied with a cold smile. He abandoned his injured wife in a hospital. That's not going to play well with any judge. She'd been right. Within 3 days, I'd filed for divorce. Within a week, the joint accounts were frozen, which meant Brandon couldn't access them either. Within 2 weeks, I had a temporary spousal support order that required Brandon to pay my medical expenses and provide me with living expenses. The look on his face when he'd been served with the papers. I wasn't there to see it, but Jenny had been at the house picking up some of my things, and she described it with glee. He went absolutely white, she told me, sitting beside my hospital bed. Started screaming at the process server about how this was all a mistake, how he was the one who wanted the divorce. The guy just handed him the papers and left. Brandon stood there in the doorway of your house, the house, looking like someone had punched him in the gut. That moment had felt like a small victory. The first of many, I hoped. But the legal battles were just one front. The physical battle was so much worse. Physical therapy started in the hospital, even before my second surgery. A therapist named Chris, a former college football player who'd blown out his knee and gotten into rehabilitation, came to my room every day to work with me. "We're going to take this slow," he'd said on that first day. "Today, we're just going to get you sitting up on your own. No standing, no walking. Just sitting. Just sitting." Something I'd done a million times in my life without thinking about it. Now it felt impossible. The pain was extraordinary. Every movement sent shockwaves through my pelvis, even with the pain medication. I cried through that first session, embarrassed and furious and hurting. "It's okay to cry," Chris had said calmly. "Everyone cries. Pain is part of healing. But you're going to push through it, Olivia. Every day, we're going to do a little more." He'd been right. Every day was a little more. Sitting up became sitting on the edge of the bed. Sitting on the edge of the bed became standing for 5 seconds with support. Standing became taking a single step with a walker. Each milestone felt monumental. Each one also felt impossibly small. 2 months after the accident, I was finally discharged from the hospital. I could walk short distances with a walker, though every step was excruciating. I could shower with help. I could dress myself if someone laid out my clothes. I was still so far from independent. Jenny and Michael had coordinated everything. They'd moved me into Jenny's apartment temporarily, a small 2-bedroom in northeast Portland. Jenny had given me her room and taken the couch. "It's just until you can manage stairs," she'd insisted. "Your house is stairs, Liv. You can't handle them yet." The house. My house. The house Brandon was still living in. That had been a special kind of torture, knowing he was sleeping in our bed, cooking in our kitchen, living in our home while I recovered in someone else's apartment. But Lucia was handling it. She filed a motion for sole possession of the marital home, arguing that I couldn't live anywhere with stairs due to my disability, and our house was a single-story ranch while Brandon could easily find an apartment. The hearing was scheduled for early December. 3 weeks away. In the meantime, I focused on physical therapy. Chris had transitioned to seeing me at an outpatient clinic 3 times a week. The sessions were brutal, stretching, strengthening, learning to walk properly again, retraining my body to do things it had done automatically for 31 years. "You're doing great," Chris said one afternoon in late November. I just walked the length of the parallel bars without the walker, 20 feet that felt like 20 miles. "I don't feel great," I panted, lowering myself carefully onto the bench. My whole body was shaking. "I feel like an old woman." "You're getting stronger every day," he insisted. "When you first came to me, you couldn't sit up on your own. Now you're walking unassisted. That's huge, Olivia." "It's not enough," I said quietly. "I need to be able to take care of myself. I need to be able to work again. I need to be able to." I stopped. What did I need to be able to do? Go back to my old life. That life was gone. Brandon had destroyed it. "You need to be patient with yourself," Chris said gently. "Recovery isn't linear. Some days will be better than others. But you're going to get there." That night, lying in Jenny's guest room, I pulled out my laptop. I'd been avoiding social media since the accident. Couldn't bear to see the happy photos of my friends' lives, their intact marriages, their functioning bodies. But tonight, something made me open Facebook. And there he was, Brandon, at some kind of work event downtown, wearing the suit I'd bought him, smiling at the camera with a drink in his hand. The caption read, Great networking event tonight. Sometimes you just need to focus on moving forward. Hashtag new beginnings, hashtag Portland, hashtag career goals. New beginnings. Like our marriage had been some kind of obstacle he'd overcome. I scrolled down. More photos. Brandon at a restaurant I recognized, the Italian place we'd gone to for our anniversary last year. But he wasn't alone. There was a woman beside him, blonde, younger than me, laughing at something he'd said. The caption, amazing dinner at Nostrana with amazing company. Life is good. Life is good. I stared at the photo until my vision blurred with tears. 2 months. It had been 2 months since he'd stood in my hospital room and told me I wasn't worth saving, and he was already dating someone else. Already posting about his amazing new life while I was struggling to walk 20 feet without collapsing. The rage that had been simmering inside me since that day in the hospital roared to life, hot and consuming. I wanted to hurt him. I wanted him to feel even a fraction of the pain he'd caused me. But more than that, I wanted to prove him wrong. I wanted to show him, and myself, that I was worth saving, that I was worth more than he'd ever appreciated. I took a screenshot of the photo with the blonde woman and sent it to Lucia with a brief message. Evidence of infidelity? Or at least a moving on while still legally married. She responded within minutes. Perfect. Saving this for the hearing. Get some rest, Olivia. We're going to bury him. December arrived with Portland's typical gray drizzle. The hearing for sole possession of the house was scheduled for December 10th, just 2 weeks before Christmas. I'd been working toward this day like it was the Olympics. Every physical therapy session, every painful step, every frustrating moment of having to ask for help, it was all leading to this. I needed to be able to walk into that courtroom on my own. I needed to show the judge, and Brandon, that I was fighting my way back. The morning of the hearing, Jenny helped me get dressed. I'd bought a new outfit online, a navy blue suit that was professional but comfortable, with pants loose enough to accommodate the brace I still had to wear on my left leg. You look amazing, Jenny said, zipping up the jacket. Seriously, Liv. You look strong. I didn't feel strong. I felt terrified. Michael drove us to the courthouse, an ugly concrete building in downtown Portland. The December rain was coming down hard, and he dropped us at the entrance so I wouldn't have to walk far. Lucia met us in the lobby. Ready? No, I said honestly. But let's do it anyway. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. Wood-paneled walls, fluorescent lighting, the Oregon state seal behind the judge's bench. A handful of other people waited for their cases to be heard. Divorces, custody battles, the debris of broken families. And then Brandon walked in. He wore a charcoal gray suit, different from the one I'd bought him. His lawyer was with him, a man in his 60s with silver hair and an expensive briefcase. Brandon's eyes swept the courtroom, landing on me for just a moment. I expected anger, maybe guilt. What I saw was worse, indifference. He looked at me like I was a stranger, some woman he vaguely recognized but couldn't quite place. Then his gaze dropped to my cane. Yes, I'd graduated from the walker to a cane 2 weeks ago, and something flickered across his face. Was it satisfaction? Vindication? See? His expression seemed to say, I was right. You're broken. I gripped the cane harder and lifted my chin. All rise, the bailiff announced. The Honorable Judge Patricia Thornton presiding. Judge Thornton was a black woman in her 60s, gray hair cut short, reading glasses perched on her nose. She looked at the docket in front of her with the weary expression of someone who'd seen too many of these cases. We're here for the matter of Whitmore versus Whitmore, she said, looking up. Motion for sole possession of the marital home. Mrs. Whitmore, you're the petitioner. Yes, Your Honor, Lucia said, standing. Lucia Moreno representing Olivia Whitmore. And Mr. Whitmore, you're represented by Gerald Hutchins, Your Honor, Brandon's lawyer said, standing with practiced ease. Judge Thornton looked between the two lawyers, then at Brandon and me. Her gaze lingered on my cane. Let's hear it, she said. Ms. Moreno, you filed this motion. Make your case. Lucia stood, composed and confident. Your Honor, my client is requesting sole possession of the marital home at 847 Southeast Hawthorne Boulevard. The home is a single-story, 3-bedroom ranch with no stairs, which is medically necessary for Mrs. Whitmore given her current physical condition. She pulled out a folder. I have medical documentation from Dr. Eleanor Patterson, orthopedic surgeon at Oregon Health and Science University Hospital, stating that Mrs. Whitmore suffered severe pelvic fractures, multiple broken ribs, and internal injuries in a car accident on August 3rd of this year. She's undergone 3 surgeries and is still in active physical therapy. Dr. Patterson specifically notes that Mrs. Whitmore cannot safely navigate stairs and requires single-level living accommodations. Judge Thornton took the papers, scanning them quickly. Lucia continued, Mr. Whitmore, on the other hand, is a healthy, able-bodied man with no physical limitations. He can live in any apartment or home in Portland. My client cannot. She requires this specific property for her medical recovery. Your Honor, Gerald Hutchins stood, his voice smooth and practiced. While we sympathize with Mrs. Whitmore's medical situation, the fact remains that Mr. Whitmore has been the primary financial contributor to the house. Yes, Your Honor, Lucia said, standing. Lucia Moreno representing Olivia Whitmore. And Mr. Whitmore, you're represented by Gerald Hutchins, Your Honor, Brandon's lawyer said, standing with practiced ease. Judge Thornton looked between the 2 lawyers, then at Brandon and me. Her gaze lingered on my cane. Let's hear it, she said. Ms. Moreno, you filed this motion. Make your case. Lucia stood, composed and confident. Your Honor, my client is requesting sole possession of the marital home at 847 Southeast Hawthorne Boulevard. The home is a single-story, 3-bedroom ranch with no stairs, which is medically necessary for Mrs. Whitmore, given her current physical condition. She pulled out a folder. I have medical documentation from Dr. Eleanor Patterson, orthopedic surgeon at Oregon Health and Science University Hospital, stating that Mrs. Whitmore suffered severe pelvic fractures, multiple broken ribs, and internal injuries in a car accident on August 3rd of this year. She's undergone 3 surgeries and is still in active physical therapy. Dr. Patterson specifically notes that Mrs. Whitmore cannot safely navigate stairs and requires single-level living accommodations. Judge Thornton took the papers, scanning them quickly. Lucia continued, Mr. Whitmore, on the other hand, is a healthy, able-bodied man with no physical limitations. He can live in any apartment or home in Portland. My client cannot. She requires this specific property for her medical recovery. Your Honor, Gerald Hutchins stood, his voice smooth and practiced. While we sympathize with Mrs. Whitmore's medical situation, the fact remains that Mr. Whitmore has been the primary financial contributor to the household throughout the marriage. He paid the down payment on the home from his savings, and he's paid the majority of the mortgage from his income. Mrs. Whitmore worked for a nonprofit, making approximately $38,000 annually, while Mr. Whitmore earns over $200,000 as a senior analyst at Cascade Financial Group. I felt my face flush. He was making me sound like a charity case, like I'd contributed nothing to our marriage. Furthermore, Hutchins continued, Mr. Whitmore should not be punished for Mrs. Whitmore's accident. It's unfortunate, certainly, but it doesn't give her the right to force him out of a home he's paid for. Judge Thornton looked at me over her glasses. Mrs. Whitmore, can you speak to your financial contributions to the marriage? I stood carefully, using the cane for support. Lucia had coached me on this. Stay calm. Stick to facts. Don't let emotion take over. Your Honor, while my salary was lower than my husband's, I contributed to our household in numerous ways. I paid for groceries, utilities, and household expenses from my income. I also did the majority of the housework, cooking, and home maintenance because Mr. Whitmore worked long hours. My voice was steadier than I expected. More importantly, marriage is supposed to be a partnership. We made the decision together for me to work at a nonprofit doing work I was passionate about while he pursued his corporate career. He benefited from having a wife who managed our home and social life so he could focus on work. That was the agreement we made. And yet, Hutchins interjected, when Mr. Whitmore needed to make difficult decisions about his future, Mrs. Whitmore filed for divorce first, specifically to gain legal advantage. That's because your client told my client that she wasn't worth saving, Lucia said sharply, standing. Your Honor, I have documentation of Mr. Whitmore's behavior at the hospital. She pulled out another folder. This is a witness statement from Dr. Eleanor Patterson, who was present when Mr. Whitmore visited his wife in the hospital 3 days after her accident. Dr. Patterson states, and I quote, "Mr. Whitmore told his wife, in front of me and hospital staff, that she was not worth the financial cost or time investment of her medical recovery. He stated he wanted a divorce and would not be paying for her medical care. His exact words were, 'She's not worth saving.'" The courtroom went silent. Judge Thornton's expression didn't change, but something hardened in her eyes. "Is that accurate, Mr. Whitmore?" Brandon stood. For the first time, he looked uncomfortable. "Your Honor, I was under extreme stress. My wife had just been in a serious accident, and the doctors were throwing around numbers like $60,000 in out-of-pocket medical expenses. I was overwhelmed. Did you or did you not tell your wife she wasn't worth saving?" Judge Thornton asked flatly. Brandon's jaw tightened. "I may have said something like that in the heat of the moment, but—" "Yes or no, Mr. Whitmore?" A long pause. Then, quietly, "Yes." Judge Thornton set down her pen. "And did you tell your wife you wanted a divorce while she was in a hospital bed, 3 days after an accident that left her unable to walk?" "Your Honor, my client's emotional state at the time," Hutchins began. "I'm asking Mr. Whitmore," the judge said sharply. "Did you?" "Yes," Brandon said, his voice tight. "But we've been having problems for months." "I have the medical records from the hospital right here," Lucia interrupted, pulling out more papers. "They show no evidence of any previous discussions of divorce or marital problems. In fact, Mrs. Whitmore's emergency contact information listed Mr. Whitmore as her husband with a note that they were trying to start a family soon. That doesn't sound like a marriage in trouble." Brandon's face flushed red. "That's private information." "It's relevant to this case," Judge Thornton said. She looked at Lucia. "Anything else, Counselor?" "Yes, Your Honor." Lucia pulled out her phone, projecting an image onto the small screen at the lawyer's table. It was the Facebook photo, Brandon at the restaurant with the blonde woman. This photo was posted to Mr. Whitmore's social media on November 15th, just 2.5 months after he told his wife he wanted a divorce because she wasn't worth the trouble. The caption says, "Life is good. He appears to be on a date." Judge Thornton studied the image. "Mr. Hutchins, does your client want to explain this?" Gerald Hutchins looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. "Your Honor, Mr. Whitmore is entitled to move on with his life. While still legally married to a woman recovering from injuries sustained during the marriage." Judge Thornton raised an eyebrow. "Interesting interpretation of marital obligations." She shuffled the papers in front of her, and I could see her mind working. Finally, she looked up. "Here's my ruling," she said. "Mrs. Whitmore is granted sole possession of the marital home at 847 Southeast Hawthorne Boulevard, effective immediately. Mr. Whitmore has 30 days to remove his personal belongings from the property." Brandon shot to his feet. "Your Honor, that's not fair." "Sit down, Mr. Whitmore," Judge Thornton said coldly. "Furthermore, Mr. Whitmore will continue to pay the mortgage and property taxes on the home until the divorce is finalized and property division is determined. Given Mrs. Whitmore's medical situation and inability to work, and given Mr. Whitmore's decision to abandon his wife during her medical crisis, I'm also increasing the temporary spousal support to $4,000 per month." "$4,000," Brandon sputtered. "That will cover Mrs. Whitmore's living expenses and medical costs not covered by insurance," the judge continued. "And before you complain, Mr. Whitmore, consider yourself lucky. I've seen cases where the abandoning spouse pays far more." She looked at him with something close to disgust. "You made a vow, in sickness and in health. When your wife needed you most, you told her she wasn't worth saving. Now you're going to pay for that choice, literally." She banged her gavel. "Next case." The rain had stopped by the time we left the courthouse, leaving the Portland streets slick and shining under the gray December sky. I stood on the courthouse steps, breathing in the cold, damp air, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Victory. "That was beautiful," Jenny breathed, hugging me carefully. She'd been sitting in the gallery watching the whole thing. "Did you see his face when the judge said $4,000 a month?" "I thought he was going to pass out," Michael added with a grin. Lucia packed her briefcase, looking satisfied. "This is good, Olivia." "Very good." The judge clearly has no sympathy for Brandon, which will help us in the final divorce settlement. And having sole possession of the house puts you in a strong position. I watched Brandon exit the courthouse with his lawyer, the two of them talking in heated whispers. Brandon's face was flushed, his hands gesturing angrily. He looked up and saw me standing there with my cane, flanked by my friends and my lawyer. For a moment, our eyes met. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just looked at him, standing on my own 2 feet. Barely, but standing, and let him see that I was still here. Still fighting. Still worth saving. He looked away first. "Come on," Jenny said, linking her arm through mine. "Let's get you home. Home. My home now. Not ours. Mine." As we drove back through Portland's rain-soaked streets, past the gray buildings and the evergreen trees and the rivers that gave the city its life, I thought about how far I'd come. 3 months ago, I couldn't sit up on my own. Now I was walking with a cane. Now I had my house back. Now I had people who loved me and fought for me. Brandon had been wrong about so many things. But mostly, he'd been wrong about me. I was worth saving. And I was just getting started. Moving back into the house was surreal. Michael and a few other friends from the nonprofit helped me on a gray afternoon 2 weeks before Christmas. Brandon had taken his 30 days, right up to the deadline, to move out, which meant he'd only been gone for 3 days when I returned. The house still smelled like him. His cologne, his coffee, the particular scent of the expensive hair products he used. But his things were gone. The closet that had held his suits was empty. His desk in the spare bedroom, the one he'd used as a home office, was bare. Even his stupid motivational posters were gone from the walls. Success is a mindset. Grind now, shine later. All the corporate nonsense he'd surrounded himself with. "Good riddance," Jenny muttered, helping me unpack boxes in the bedroom. "This place already feels lighter without his energy." She wasn't wrong. The house did feel different. Emptier, yes, but also cleaner somehow. Like our infection had been removed. I walked through each room slowly, relearning the space. The living room where we'd watched movies on Friday nights. The kitchen where I'd cooked dinners he barely touched because he was always on his phone. The backyard where we talked about maybe getting a dog someday. All those memories felt like they belonged to a different person. A different Olivia who'd been smaller, quieter, more willing to make herself convenient. That Olivia was gone. "You okay?" Michael asked, finding me standing in the backyard as the December sun set early, painting the sky in shades of gray and pale orange. "Yeah," I said, and I meant it. "I'm okay." Christmas came and went quietly. Jenny insisted I come to her family celebration, and I spent the day surrounded by her loud, loving Chinese-American family, eating too much food and laughing at her nephew's antics. It was the first time in months I'd felt genuinely happy. Then came January, and with it, physical therapy intensified. Chris had me on a new program, more aggressive, more challenging. He wanted me off the cane by March. "You can do it," he insisted during a particularly brutal session. "Your strength is coming back. We just need to keep pushing. Keep pushing." That had become my mantra. Keep pushing through the pain. Keep pushing through the doubt. Keep pushing forward. By February, I graduated from the cane to walking unassisted for short distances. By March, I could walk a full mile, slowly, with rest breaks, but I could do it. The divorce proceedings crawled forward. Lucia was meticulous, building our case piece by piece. We had documentation of everything. Brandon's abandonment, his social media posts with other women. Yes, there were more. His attempts to hide money, his refusal to help with my medical expenses until the judge forced him. "He's making this easy for us," Lucia said during one of our meetings. "Every time his lawyer tries to argue for a bigger share of the assets, we just point to his behavior and watch it fall apart." The final divorce hearing was scheduled for April 15th, tax day, appropriately enough. But something happened in late March that changed everything. I was at the grocery store, something I could finally do on my own again. A small victory that felt enormous. I was in the produce section, trying to decide between red and green peppers, when I heard a voice behind me. "Olivia!" I turned and saw her, the blonde woman from Brandon's Facebook photos. She looked younger up close, maybe 26 or 27, wearing yoga pants and a puffy jacket. Pretty in that generic way, with highlighted hair and perfect makeup. Yes, I said carefully. She looked uncomfortable, shifting her grocery basket from one hand to the other. I'm Amber. I'm dating Brandon. Was dating Brandon. I don't know. She laughed nervously. This is weird. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. What do you want? I asked, not unkindly. I was curious despite myself. Amber took a deep breath. I wanted to apologize. And to warn you, I guess. Warn me about what? She looked around the produce section, then lowered her voice. Can we talk? Maybe grab coffee. I know this is strange, but I think you need to hear this. 20 minutes later, we were sitting in a Starbucks on Hawthorne, 2 blocks from my house. Amber wrapped her hands around her latte like she was trying to draw warmth from it. I didn't know about you, she started. I mean, I knew he was married, but he told me you guys were separated. That you'd grown apart and the divorce was just a formality. He made it sound mutual. I sipped my coffee, saying nothing. We started dating in October, she continued. He seemed great at first. Successful, charming, attentive. He took me to nice restaurants, bought me gifts. I thought I'd hit the jackpot, you know. What changed? I asked. Amber's face darkened. I got sick. Nothing serious, just a bad flu that turned into bronchitis. I was out of work for 2 weeks. And suddenly, Brandon was different, distant, annoyed that I couldn't go out, frustrated that I was always tired. My stomach dropped. Then one night, we were at his apartment. He's renting this place in the Pearl District, and I was coughing really badly. I asked him to get me some water, and he just snapped. Said he was tired of dealing with sick people, that he didn't sign up to be a nurse. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. I asked him what he meant, and he told me. About you. About the accident. About how you trapped him in a marriage where he had to take care of you. He said you were manipulative, that you'd gotten hurt on purpose to keep him from leaving. The coffee in my hand suddenly felt heavy. He said I got hit by a car on purpose. That's what he told me, Amber whispered. And he said all these terrible things about you. How you were lazy, how you never contributed financially, how you were a burden. He made you sound like this awful person. But you're here, I pointed out, talking to me. Why? Amber wiped her eyes. Because I got curious. I looked you up online. Found your LinkedIn, your Facebook. You worked, for a youth arts nonprofit. All your posts were about helping kids, about fundraisers, about community programs. You didn't seem like the person Brandon described. She pulled out her phone. And then I found this. She showed me a news article from August, local news covering the accident. Driver runs red light, causes serious injury. There was even a photo of my car, crushed on the driver's side. The other driver was charged with reckless driving, Amber said. The police report said you had a green light. You didn't cause the accident. You were the victim. We sat in silence for a moment. He lied about everything, didn't he? Amber asked quietly. Yes, I said simply. He did. Amber closed her eyes. I'm so sorry. For believing him. For being part of hurting you. I feel like such an idiot. You didn't know, I said, and I meant it. I couldn't hate her. She was just another person Brandon had used and discarded when she became inconvenient. There's more, Amber said. And this is why I wanted to warn you. Brandon's been talking about the divorce. He's furious about the spousal support, about losing the house. He keeps saying he's going to make you pay for ruining his life. My blood ran cold. Make me pay how? I don't know exactly. But he's been meeting with his lawyer a lot. And he's been going through finances, looking for anything he can use against you. I heard him on the phone once talking about proving you were capable of working so the judge would reduce the support. She leaned forward. Olivia, I think he's going to try to have you followed, to prove you're not as injured as you say you are. He's desperate and angry, and I don't think he's thinking clearly. I sat back in my chair, processing this information. Brandon was trying to build a case that I was faking my injuries. After everything. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Amber looked at me with something like respect. Because what he did to you was cruel. And what he said about you was all lies. And because... She paused. Because I think he's a bad person, and bad people shouldn't win. I gave her Lucia's contact information. My lawyer needs to hear all of this. Would you be willing to talk to her? Maybe give a statement? Amber nodded. Yes, absolutely. We parted ways outside the Starbucks. Two women who both learned the hard way who Brandon Whitmore really was. Lucia was thrilled when I told her about Amber. This is perfect, she said during our meeting the next week. His own girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, testifying that he's lied about the circumstances of your divorce, that he's trying to manipulate the outcome. Judge Thornton is going to eat him alive. What about the part where he wants to have me followed? I asked. Lucia waved dismissively. Let him try. You're clearly still in recovery. You walk with a limp. You have physical therapy 3 times a week. You have medical documentation from multiple doctors. Any investigator would just confirm what we're already saying. But she leaned forward, her expression serious. That said, be careful. Men like Brandon, when they're cornered and humiliated, can become unpredictable. Don't meet with him alone. If he contacts you, document everything. And if you feel unsafe, call the police. I nodded, but I wasn't scared. Maybe I should have been. But all I felt was a cold, calm determination. Brandon wanted to play games. Fine. I've been playing this game for 8 months now, ever since that day in the hospital. And I was winning. The final divorce hearing arrived on a gray April morning. Portland's famous rain was back in force, drumming against the courthouse windows as we waited for our case to be called. Brandon arrived with Gerald Hutchins, both of them looking grim. Brandon had lost weight, I noticed. His face was thinner, harder. His eyes had dark circles beneath them. Good. I hoped he wasn't sleeping well. Jenny and Michael were with me as always. They'd become more than friends over the past 8 months. They were family. The family that showed up. The family that stayed. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Thornton. The same judge as before. That was good. She already knew Brandon's character. The hearing took 3 hours. Hutchins presented Brandon's case, that he deserved a larger share of the marital assets because he'd been the primary earner, that the spousal support should be reduced because I was clearly recovering and would be able to work soon, that he'd been under undue stress during his hospital visit, and his words shouldn't be held against him. Then Lucia presented our case. She walked Judge Thornton through everything: the medical records, the police report from the accident, Dr. Patterson's testimony about Brandon's behavior at the hospital, the social media posts showing Brandon dating while still married, the documentation of him trying to hide money. And then she called Amber to the stand. Brandon's face went white when Amber walked in. He clearly hadn't expected this. Amber testified about everything: Brandon's lies about me, his cruelty when she was sick, his statements about making me pay for the divorce, his admission that he'd abandoned me because he didn't want to deal with my recovery. He told me, Amber said clearly, looking directly at Judge Thornton, that his wife had gotten hurt to trap him in the marriage. But when I researched the accident, I found out she'd been hit by a drunk driver who ran a red light. She was the victim. He'd lied about everything. When she was done, Hutchins tried to discredit her, suggesting she was a scorned ex-girlfriend with an axe to grind. But Amber remained calm and consistent. I'm here, she said simply, because what Mr. Whitmore did to his wife was wrong, and because I believed his lies, and I don't want to be part of perpetuating them. Judge Thornton called a 30-minute recess to review all the materials. When she returned, her expression was granite. I'm going to be frank, she said. In 30 years on the bench, I've seen a lot of ugly divorces. But Mr. Whitmore, your behavior throughout this case has been appalling. Brandon stood rigidly beside his lawyer. You abandoned your wife while she was hospitalized with life-threatening injuries, Judge Thornton continued. You told her she wasn't worth saving. You attempted to leave her with no financial support during her recovery. You lied to other people about the circumstances of your separation. You moved on to a new relationship while still legally married, and while your wife was still learning to walk again. And even now, you're trying to minimize your responsibility and maximize your financial gain. She looked down at her notes. Here's my ruling. The marital home at 847 Southeast Hawthorne Boulevard is awarded solely to Mrs. Whitmore. Mr. Whitmore has already been removed from the property, and Mrs. Whitmore will refinance the mortgage in her name alone. Lucia squeezed my hand under the table. All other marital assets will be divided 60-40 in favor of Mrs. Whitmore, the judge continued. That includes savings accounts, retirement accounts, and any other shared property. Given Mr. Whitmore's abandonment and cruelty, Mrs. Whitmore is entitled to a larger share. Brandon made a sound like he'd been punched. Furthermore, spousal support will continue at $4,000 per month for the next 3 years, after which it will be reduced to $2,000 per month for an additional 2 years. This will give Mrs. Whitmore time to fully recover and rebuild her career. Your Honor, that's unreasonable, Hutchins started. What's unreasonable, Counselor, is your client's behavior, Judge Thornton snapped. Mr. Whitmore makes over $200,000 annually. He can afford spousal support, and frankly, given his actions, he's getting off easy. She signed the papers in front of her with sharp, decisive strokes. This divorce is granted. The marriage between Brandon Whitmore and Olivia Whitmore is dissolved. You're free to go. She banged her gavel, and it was over. 8 months of fighting, of recovery, of rebuilding myself from the ground up. It was over. I'd won. Outside the courthouse, the rain had stopped, leaving the city washed clean and gleaming. Jenny hugged me, so hard I almost lost my balance. You did it, she kept saying. Oh my God, Liv, you did it. Michael was grinning like a fool. Did you see his face? I thought he was going to stroke out when the judge said 60-40. Lucia shook my hand, professional to the end. Congratulations, Olivia. This was a clear victory. You should be proud. I watched Brandon exit the courthouse, his expensive suit soaked from the rain, his face a mask of barely controlled rage. He saw me standing there with my friends, my lawyer, my support system. He opened his mouth like he was going to say something, but Hutchins grabbed his arm and pulled him toward their car. As they drove away, I realized I didn't feel triumphant or vindicated. I just felt free. 6 months later, I stood in the backyard of my house, watching the October sun set over Portland. The leaves were turning gold and red, falling in lazy spirals to the grass. I'd been back at work for 2 months now, part-time at first but building up. The kids at the youth arts program had been so excited to see me return. They'd made a "Welcome back, Miss Olivia" banner that still hung in my office. My limp was barely noticeable now. I'd probably always have some pain, some stiffness on cold days. But I could walk, I could work, I could live independently. I'd done what Brandon said was impossible. I'd saved myself. Jenny came through the back door, carrying 2 glasses of wine. Dinner's almost ready. You okay out here? Yeah, I said, taking one of the glasses. Just thinking. About Brandon? A little, I admitted. I heard through the grapevine that he's having money problems. The spousal support and the asset split apparently hit him hard. He had to move to a smaller apartment. Jenny raised her glass. Good. Fuck him. I laughed, touching my glass to hers. Fuck him. We drank as the sun sank lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. You know what the crazy thing is? I said quietly. I'm grateful. Jenny looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Grateful. Not for what he did, I clarified quickly, but for what it taught me. I was so small before, Jenny. I made myself small for him, for our marriage. I thought that's what love was, making yourself convenient, not asking for too much, being grateful for whatever scraps of affection he gave me. I looked at my house, my beautiful single-story house with its garden and its memories and its future. Now I know what I'm worth, and I know I'll never accept less again. Damn right you won't, Jenny said fiercely. You're a badass, Liv. You survived a car crash, multiple surgeries, months of physical therapy, a devastating divorce, and Brandon's bullshit. You're basically invincible. I didn't feel invincible, but I felt strong. Real strong, not the fake strength of pretending everything was fine. The strength of someone who'd been broken and put herself back together, piece by piece, scar by scar. Brandon had looked at me in that hospital bed and decided I wasn't worth saving. He'd been wrong. I wasn't worth saving. I was worth everything. And I'd proven it, to him and to myself, and to anyone who'd ever doubt me again. The sun set completely, leaving the Portland sky streaked with the last traces of light. Inside, I could hear Michael calling that dinner was ready, could smell the garlic and herbs from whatever he'd cooked. I took one last look at the darkening sky, at the stars just beginning to appear. Then I went inside, to my home, to my friends, to my life. The life I'd built on my own. The life I'd saved.